À sexta-feira, na Voz da América.
Are you tired of hearing only negative news headlines? Well, more and more journalists are now trying to look past what may be going wrong and focus on what appears to be right. It's an approach to news reporting that focuses on solutions to social problems. Hello and welcome to Our Voices. I am Semenyi Shekoye and I'm joined by my co-hosts Orian Itangishaka and Ginny Niwa. Today, we are talking about solution journalism, which is innovative reporting that focuses on stories that lead to a meaningful change. Hello, ladies.
Hello, hello. Hey, I just love this conversation.
Yes, because, all the three of us have been working in media at least for over a decade, right? And we all know how frustrating it can be to report only bad news.
Yes, for the most part. Yes, for the most part, it seems like we're only reporting bad news because the positive news just a little bit. But one profound statement as VOA journalists that always reminds us what we do is the statement that was made in our very first broadcast in 1942 by William Harlan Halley that said, the news might be good, the news might be bad, but we shall tell you the truth.
Exactly.
And part of that truth is the positive things that are happening in our society, in our communities, that must be reported to bring, changes in our community, right? Now, our journalistic responsibility is not just to inform, it's also to educate.
Because part of the truth is also the solution. Part
Right.
of the truth is that it's possible, right?
Right, and people are, they don't deserve to always be bombarded by negative news because that's just too much, even for us as journalists.
Yeah, and I think also it shows that we're taking, accountability. We are bringing those news. Why not? And also for a long time, I think the news have surfed on that wave of hooking our audience with those bad news. Scientists have shown that, the human being tends to, take the bad news first, getting hooked on that almost. So it's good that we're shifting our focus now.
Yeah, I agree, because there is this thing called the bad news fatigue, which means the audience is growingly getting tired of only hearing the negative without, a context on how to, go past that negative.
Right.
And we also, as journalists, we don't always want to be the barrier of bad news or negative news. We want to be impactful.
Right.
We want to, direct to where the change can be made.
Right. To bring light in dark places.
Exactly. And it's not only us, journalists are often frustrated as they report on current events and as they continue to bring the news, but without any capacity to influence change. With solutions-based journalism, reporting can go beyond telling what is wrong in society by also sharing positive and realistic perspectives on how people can solve widely shared problems. Despite challenges such as funding to carry out intensive reporting, media outlets across Africa are increasingly shifting to solutions journalism and giving direction to society on how to move forward. In return, according to the Solutions Journalism Network, it's a way for broadcasters to rebuild trust with audience and boost engagement. On this week's episode of Our Voices, we will discuss solutions-based journalism and why it's important to society.
Well, with media outlets worldwide competing with social media for audience, some are turning to solution journalism to offer audience a more depth and proactive approach to issues such as climate change. Victoria Among reports from Nairobi, Kenya.
For years, local radio journalist Henix Obuchunju reported on issues important to his community, such as gender-based violence or GBV. But the Nairobi, Kenya-based journalist says the reports weren't having the effect he had hoped for.
So most of these stories were about, GBV, where I come from or where I serve as a journalist. But at the end of the day, you get frustrated because you've not helped this listener to move a step ahead.
So Obuchunju switched his approach and trained in solutions journalism, a style of reporting that focuses on responses to social problems along with problems themselves. Two of his reports that adopted this style of media won recognition in Kenya.
And I'm already mentoring other young journalists who want to pursue that particular route. I mean, yes, not all of us would do politics, not all of us would do other stories. But in any story that we do, what is this new thing in terms of a solution?
The trend toward solutions journalism comes as media compete with social media for audiences' attention, with studies showing younger people using social media sites like TikTok more often for their information and a growing number of news avoiders, people disengaged from news entirely. Media are looking for ways to reconnect with audiences. As solutions journalism gathers momentum, media trainers like Kiundu Waweru are helping. He has trained over 100 reporters so far on covering topics including health, technology, and climate change.
No longer, not many people wait for 9 o'clock news or for tomorrow's newspaper that has yesterday's news. Yeah, so what can a journalist do different from the people that are online? I think these new ways of telling stories, you know, investigative, solutions-based stories, to engage the audiences more.
More solutions-based journalism reports are coming into newsrooms, says Mary Mwendwa, an editor at the news website Talk Africa. Mwendwa told VOA that the approach helps keep the mainstream media relevant.
We come in as a mainstream media because, you see, for you to address a problem and bring in a solution, you take the reader through a trailer. You start stating there is climate change, somebody is having an innovation around this subject, these are the challenges they are facing. So you take the reader through a certain trail, which social media will not do, because social media, it's about clicks.
Television and radio remain a dominant news platform in Kenya, so media trainers hope that reaching the next generation of journalists will ensure they can still have an impact on the community they cover. Victoria Amunga, VOA News, Nairobi.
Well, many societies are yearning for this kind of reporting that inspires and gives hope. To learn more about what solutions journalism is and why it's especially important to Africa, we invited Rona Mayor, Africa Initiative Manager at Solutions Journalism Network. Rona is also an investigative reporter, researcher, and the first Nigerian journalist to be nominated for International Emmy Award. Rona is joining us from Trier, Germany. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been listening in as well.
It's a pleasure to have you. And I know you studied microbiology, and in your reporting days in Nigeria, you used your science background not only to report on what you see wrong, but also, you know, to suggest how to fix it. So how do you explain the difference solutions journalism is making in reporting?
I mean, the difference that solutions journalism is making specific to Africa is evidence that comes from 60 countries, where 60 newsrooms in 4 countries. And what we've seen is that there is trust from the audience, because solutions journalism does not report only on success. It also investigates failed solutions. And so we've seen trust from the audience. Importantly, we've seen trust actually from the authorities, because when they see the balance that all sides of the stories are told, for example, about a policy that is supposed to be a solution, they see that the journalist is just here to do their job. And so we have actually seen the polarization that occurs between the police, for example, in Kenya, and journalists actually ending in the sense that in one county, a newsroom journalist was invited to give more talk on their solutions journalism by the police force, which is something that doesn't happen all the time. We've also seen governments reach out to the people, the citizens who are featured with their solutions and say, hey, dear journalists, could you link us up with the person who is doing this? We want to replicate it. And that, for me, is the power of solutions journalism. It takes away the excuses of just saying, okay, everything is bad, but it says this is how it can be done right because somebody else is doing it, and this is how they're doing it. These are the challenges you will face if you try to do it, And because of that, we see improved mental health and reception. So I'll end with the example from Uganda, the Uganda Broadcasting Service, where whenever they do a solution story, they have 5 times more views. And I think that can only be a good thing for journalism and for us as journalists as well.
Thank you, Rona. Can you enlighten our viewers a little bit more in terms of, is staying away from bad news and simply reporting good news solution journalism, and what makes the distinction there specifically?
Oh no. Reporting that everything is good is either showbiz or public relations. I like to. I do not think you can. The audience is too sophisticated anyway to be taken in by you by believing that everything is good or everything is bad. The distinction that solutions journalism has is that it will point clearly to the limitations behind that solution. It also looks at failed solutions to investigate why they failed. And so what that does is that it actually goes further, as Mary, who we heard from, has said. It goes further than just saying, okay, this is something that is great, it's good, it's nice. It also doesn't center on people. Now, while like traditional journalism, as we all know, you will want to tell the story from the approach of the human angle, the person that's just like you and I. Solutions journalism does not turn people into heroes. It focuses on the systemic change that humans like you and I bringing about. So those are the differences, yeah.
So some people also argue that the responsibility of the media is just to report the fact without adding any opinion, and it's up to the society to decide what to respond, right? So how do we determine if a piece can be a solution journalism?
As you said, report the facts. If a solution is working, you should report the facts. So if in a village, so let me give some examples. So in Kenya, we have something called the Ability Trust. And that's a solution that actually helps women and girls who are living with disabilities, neurodivergent women, with a phone line where they can be able to report. You know, people living with disabilities might not be able to express themselves. There's the added layer of trauma. So it helps them to be able to report violence. And if you look at that, it's a fact that the hotline exists. It's a fact that the Ability Trust exists. If you report that fact, great. But where solutions journalism comes in is to say that it is not everybody that has a disability that can speak.
Right.
For example, using the phone line. It is not everybody that can even have a device that can connect to the toll-free line. And so when you report that side as well, and the costs even of making calls, even if it's a toll-free line, you have to have a phone, you have to actually be in a place where there's reception. These things really distinguish solutions journalism. And if you just reported that there was a toll-free line and everything was good or everything was bad, the public can actually not have the full information to be able to A, donate, or B, use the toll-free line. And so that's where solutions journalism is different. It's the whole story.
Right. Well, thank you so much for all these, precisions. Rona Mayor, Africa Initiative Manager at Solution Journalism Network. Thank you for being with us. It's time for a break, but we will continue our conversation on the ongoing effort to reintroduce solution journalism to media houses in order to promote constructive conversation and rebuild trust in the media. We also love to hear from you on social media platforms. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter, and our handle is at VOA Africa. Use the hashtag VOA Our Voices. We'll be right back.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. when we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
You're watching VOA's Red Carpet. My name is Jackson Vunganyi. Thank you so much for joining us each week right here on Red Carpet. We bring you the latest in
health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linoch Mudu, in Washington every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
This week on Straight Talk Africa, pro-Israeli and pro-Palestinian protesters have clashed in the South African city of Cape Town. This week, we'll look at the South African government's foreign policy amid the war in the Middle East. Why has this conflict hit such a nerve in some African countries and not in others? Join me, Heidi Adams, and my guests on the next Straight Talk Africa.
Welcome back. You are watching Our Voices. With us in the studio now is our colleague Salem Salomon, a senior editor at Africa Division here in Voice of America. Beside her daily tasks of covering the latest news from across the continent, Salem is also focusing on solution journalism. Salem, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
great to be with colleagues.
Thank you for coming back. Coming back. Yeah. Well, I know you recently have taken the trainings on solutions journalism, and I know also you are part of the process in VOA to take this approach in the media house. How is the process like? What has been done so far?
So this has been a process that has been in starting for quite some time, and now VOA is taking the initiative. VOA is a big international media. We have 48 languages. More specifically, within the Africa division, we have 16 languages. We're reaching out a big audience. And so why solutions journalism? Because what we do is tell the whole story. Like what you said, we don't tell a single story. We tell a whole story. So think of it as one of the tools that we're applying to our daily reporting. And so we're in the process of trying to impart what we learned. We went through a training, solutions journalism training. We're in the process of, just getting ready to impart what we learned with colleagues like yourselves, and we're really looking forward to it. And so it's just a different way of engaging with our audience. It's a different way of building trust with our audience, and a different way of showing, positive stories, but impactful stories where people are responding to systemic problems in their societies.
So sometimes there's a tendency to see positive reports as propaganda or activism. How do we make the difference?
That's actually a very pertinent question, especially because what do we do at VOA? We broadcast to countries where there's autocracies. There are governments that are deliberately stifling information. There are systems that really limit the flow of information, right? So it's not just bad news or good news. Let's not look, I mean, if we don't report when something bad happens, we would be abdicating our responsibility as journalists, okay? So how do we make sure that, or how do we, what's the distinction between something that you see on state media, for instance, in East Africa or in, West Africa? How do you make sure that it's not press releases or public relations to varnish someone's leadership's look or a government's image? Solutions journalism really starts with responding to a problem. So what that means is that you are addressing something head on. You are doing investigative journalism to identify what the problem is.
And there are 4
pillars.
questions.
Yeah, there are 4 pillars that we follow on solutions journalism. First is responding to a societal problem, not just a personal story that inspires. That's not what we're looking for. We're trying to give insight to our viewers. You're engaging with our viewers or listeners or readers in a different way. Think of it that way, because news could be bad, but what was that problem, systemic problem that was impacting? So the 4 pillars that we're talking about, we're looking for evidence, we're looking for responding to a big problem, but not everything good has also limitations. Nothing is perfect in this life. We're very realistic in our profession, as you know. And at the end also, as I said, you're not really trying to inspire someone, you're trying to give them insight.
Right.
You want your viewer to take away or to learn from a story about why did this work for this community? So
Yes.
that's the difference.
And that's great. And I think that, like as you said, governments will also appreciate the fact that there are some positive things that are coming out of some of those nations. Well, now let's take a listen to some of the women journalists on the continent about how they view journalism in helping to solve some societal issues, especially women's issues. In our Your Voice segment, we're going to hear from Anita Kahiva, Landrea Mowa, and we have also Stella Zizorm Sogli and Victoria Kay Bafour from Ghana.
The media is doing an excellent job when it comes to highlighting women's issues. But when it comes to influencing, our lawmakers, our policies, and those type of things to change these issues that are being highlighted on in terms of African women or women in general, it doesn't pack the punch like it's supposed to do. We need to do a bit more so that we can affect change at the end of the day.
We don't have journalists like a lady that is focusing more on bringing out women issues, women in the boardroom, women in corporate world, women in a business world, for example. It's being reported together. For example, it says who has been appointed as a CEO, but it's normal part of normal news. You, for example, don't have a specific section in the Namibian newspaper that deals with women issues or issues that are affecting women. So if we can just highlight it and bring it out more, and that will also encourage other people to be part of it, because for now we only see it as it happened, but other people can also bring themselves the stories to you once you get a specific section dedicated to women issues.
When it comes to gender-based issues or issues affecting women, I think they're really in the forefront. We see more on issues negatively affecting women, like a woman being attacked, a woman being killed, gender-based violence, and we would like to see more positive stories in terms of successes of women, and also the turnaround in terms of how has this reporting positively impacted institutions, and how, as far as women representation and as far as maybe law reform in the protection of women in certain areas. So we'd like to see more of that, but I definitely think it's definitely positive. We are going in the right direction.
So even though I can say that reporting on women in Africa, especially in Ghana, have increased over the years, whether or not those coverages are receiving the kind of attention and the solutions that they cry for is something that is neither here nor there. I think that for my country, and speaking as a woman, a lot more can be done.
The term or word journalism itself is supposed to educate, entertain, and actually inform. I can throw this challenge to you that without a journalist or news from journalism, hardly would you know what is going on around the world. And if I'm to answer this question of mine to see if journalism coverage has solved a lot of issues, indeed it has. It has really solved, because recently, when you come to Ghana as a country, there was recently a woman called Mimuna Tusulemana, and this woman was actually part of Ghana's national team, women's national team, where she was a goalkeeper. And even after all that she has done for the country, after taking or scoring all those goals, receiving all the bombastics and all of that, it came to light that where she was staying was tattered. It was so bad. And after the news or coverage from Ghana Web, then the next day it came to light that a former president of Ghana called John Dramani Mahama went to the woman and also, gave her a support. So basically, I feel that journalism is actually helping and has actually solved an issue here in Ghana.
Great, great, great. It seems like it was not just in Ghana, it was also a Namibian journalist that we heard from. But I want to turn to Salim and say, it seems that solution journalism requires a little bit of digging, which may require more resources to, be able to present what works in society. Is that a challenge, you think?
For us journalists, not just more resources, but time. Time is what we struggle with. As you know, you have your daily turn, you have like limited time, especially for evidence-based, rigorous journalism like solutions journalism. You need investigative chops to have, to delve into. But there's also a way to approach it. So for instance, if you have a 2-minute show or a 2-minute TV package, you can have the elements that I talked about. How is a big problem being responded to? What are the limitations to address this problem? Mm-hmm. And so there's a way you can use the small slices, small slices of solutions journalism, and tell your audience that we will come back with more deeper analysis. And so you're engaging constantly engaging with your audience that way.
Why do you say it's especially important for media outlets in Africa, especially? And how do you, especially with the scarcity of resources, as you said, how can it be implemented?
And a place that's always reporting negative news, war, famine, and so forth.
That is our responsibility to do it. It's just why, I would frame it, why not? I would say, why not add this tool to our reporting? Yes. The thing is, we should always report, we could keep doing what we're doing. What we're doing is not a negative thing. Right. This is public responsibility. And so it's just adding one more tool to engage, to build trust with our audience, viewers, and readers.
Thank you so much, Salim, for always coming back and giving us your insight. And that's where we end our show today. We thank our colleague Salim for joining us. We also thank Rona Mayor, Africa Initiative Director at the Solutions Journalism Network, who joined us earlier. We also want to thank our editorial and production teams on our voices. We will see you again next week with another exciting program. Be sure to continue the conversation on our